Oh, you fucking snipers. Yo, what is up guys, this is Tyrannic Swine here, and welcome to another game review. This time I am reviewing RainbowSix Vegas 2, the sequel to the first Vegas game, and it's again made by Ubisoft and published by them, and it is a tactical first-person shooter. Now, the second Vegas game is actually definitely an improvement over the first one, by pretty much a big margin. Basically, a lot of the complaints I had with the first game are definitely improved in this one. Yes, the story still isn't as interesting, but hey, it wasn't as bull as the first one, I think. I mean, this time you are playing as a guy named Bishop, who, again, is trying to stop a terrorist threat on Vegas, but this time you don't seem to spend what seems like you're in Vegas a lot. Most of the time you're actually in different locations compared to the first Vegas game. Because this time you're like not really running around casinos and more like going around normal civilian type areas. Like you go into a school at some point, a factory, hell, you even going into a gaming convention at some point. So it felt like there was a lot more different areas to go to rather than in the first Vegas game where a lot of it was going around like sort of casinos, which are usually in Vegas, but this time this felt a bit more away from that. But yeah, I thought the story was not really much more interesting, but it wasn't as stale as the first one. Hell, at least it doesn't end as bad as the first game, because this time at least there is a final boss, even though that final boss is a helicopter, and probably where the Division got its boss idea from. But yeah, the story's a little bit longer this time as well. There's like 7 acts throughout this game, and it's like about probably 4 or 5 chapters in each one. Apart from this first one, it only has like 2. So it probably took me about probably the same amount of time as the first one, considering that the difficulty for this game isn't as much as the first one. There's actually 3 difficulties this time instead of 2, casual, normal, and realistic. I played on normal, and compared to Vegas 1, this felt a lot better with its difficulty spread, because the first Vegas game was a pain, just a big pain in the ass. Yeah, it was a huge pain in the ass trying to get through a lot of certain areas. This time, the checkpoint system definitely has been improved. It's like, it doesn't fuck you over like the first one does, sending you back like miles away. This time, this game actually puts the checkpoints in a decent, decent points in the game, so you don't go back as much. So when you die, it's not too bad compared to the first game. It didn't, yeah, and the enemies don't feel that difficult either. Well, they don't throw them in your face as badly as the first Vegas game. But yeah, I think the campaign was definitely improved upon in quite a lot of areas. Well, a lot of the areas that I was really kind of annoyed with, like the story was just bland and awful and ended on a massive cliffhanger that just felt completely pointless. Checkpoints have been improved. There's a few new mechanical differences in this game compared to the first one, which I'll talk to you in a minute. But yeah, I think the campaign was actually improved upon in this game. Though it doesn't really still get to me, but it was at least more enjoyable to play than the first Vegas game. Now, the mechanics for this game are a little bit different compared to the first one. Well, there's like a few extra additions. The button layout is still the same from the first game, and pretty much like you still have AI like dudes that go around with you that can be used to help out. But this time, when it comes to like going up to a door, like you can either breach, smoke, flashbang, or throw a grenade. The grenade options and the breach options are actually limited this time. Whereas in the first game they were unlimited, but in this game they actually have like only a limited amount of goals. Like you can only do it 10 times with the breach or the grenades. So this time you have to be a bit more careful with which situation you want to choose. And when you use the snake cam, this time you can actually tag your enemies, so you can actually keep like an eye on them like so you know what enemies are in there, which actually does help you a little bit out in case for the options that you want to choose. Yeah, a lot of the gaming, like a lot of the mechanics from the first game are pretty much in this game, but only slightly improved upon, which actually does help a lot. You actually can, much like with Halo Reach, you can actually play in the campaign with your own customized character. I thought that was actually pretty interesting as well. And there is actually a considerable amount of weapons in this game. Compared to the first one, it still has pretty much all the weapons from the first game, with a few new additions. But I think that was really good that there's a lot more type of weapons in this game. And again, there is attachments, like you can only put one on at a time. And so yeah, I think the weapons all perform pretty well. This is one of those games where the weapons actually don't, like, hardly any of them seem to be really that much different in performance-wise. Any weapon will practically do in this game, to be honest, which is technically a good thing. Yeah, there is actually different types of enemies in this game too. You don't have just like the normal infantrymen and the sniper guys like in the first one. I mean, you still technically have those guys, but there's a few new additions like shielded enemies, like, you know, right shield dudes. You have enemies with heavier infantry types, since pretty much when I got to the final part of the game, there were enemy soldiers that had more armor and stuff on, making it a little bit more difficult to kill them. So they definitely did introduce more enemy types into the game to make it a little bit more difficult. I thought was actually pretty interesting. But yeah, like I said before, the button layout's still confusing as hell. But once you've played the first Vegas game and then you play this one, then you pretty much have the button layout down, pretty much. But yeah, I think like the way some things were handled, like the fact that they actually improved upon some mechanics that could have been improved upon in the first game, were actually improved, I think was actually a very decent thing. So yeah, I think another good point about this game is the fact that the mechanics have been improved on. Also, yes, you can actually sprint in this game too, which was definitely something needed from the first one. And so yeah, finally you can now sprint, which is always a lifesaver for when you accidentally throw a grenade, or it bounces off a wall. So yeah, so sprint has now been introduced, which makes things a lot more easier. Now, the terrorist hunt mode has, well, there's not really much changes compared to the first Vegas game. It practically works the same way. The only difference I can definitely say is probably that it feels a little bit more difficult, or much more difficult compared to the first game. It definitely relies more on teamwork, does the terrorist hunt mode in this game. In the first game, it's like you can actually beat it pretty easily, to be honest. In this game, it's a little bit more difficult, and having a full team of 4 people, especially if you're going to be doing it on realistic mode, is definitely needed. And so yeah, it also helps to pay attention to what weapons you take along too, because there is the maps are quite different. Like, some are more open than others, while some are more a lot smaller and more compact. So it's always best to take note of what weapons you're going to be taking along to fight against the enemies. There is a new leveling up system in this game too, because for once, the first Vegas game didn't have all its game modes have a connected leveling up system, whereas with this game, Terrorist Hunt and Campaign actually have the same leveling up ranking thing. Basically meaning if you play the campaign or the terrorist hunt, you'll be leveling up your character. You'll be basically leveling up your character, since you basically can play your customized character in the campaign and terrorist hunt, and the multiplayer as well. And I actually think that was a pretty good idea. Like, basically did what Halo Reach did 2 years after this game, but I think I like having a game that has all its game modes pretty much connected with its leveling up in some ways. Not sure if I think the multiplayer was a little bit of a different leveling up, but yeah. The multiplayer is pretty much the same as it was in the first game. You can actually take two primaries and a like pistol in the story and Terrorist Hunt this time, whereas Terrorist Hunt in the first Vegas game you could only have like a primary and then a pistol. So the primary and the pistol is only secluded to the multiplayer this time. But it feels very, you know, standard, just like the first Vegas game. I don't really think there's any like improvements or major improvements compared to the first Vegas game. Played it for a bit, it just didn't really feel that much different. The Terrorist Hunt and the campaign. Terrorist Hunt was definitely a lot of fun, just like it always was. I think it was actually a bit more fun in this game, and considering I think there's actually more enemies to take down in this game. It depends on the map size, because some of the numbers are different. Some range from like 25 to like 45 at times, depending on how big the map is. So yeah, I think the Terrorist Hunt was actually improved a little bit in this game. It was definitely a lot more fun compared to the first one. You can play the campaign and Terrorist Hunt cooperatively, which is actually, I think, is actually a lot better. If you're going to be playing the campaign, make sure to play with someone. Do the same with Vegas, the first Vegas game, because otherwise you're just going to be dying from anger. But yeah, I think you're definitely going to want to play this game. It's more of a cooperative game, is the Vegas series. Now there is a surprising amount of customization in this game too. Like you have different armor pieces and stuff that you can like customize and stuff like that, and each have like a different property, like which some will add on more armor or protection, and some will actually increase or decrease the mobility of your character. So the heavier armor you put on, the less quick you'll be able to move. So having a nice mixture between protection and mobility, I think, is the best prioritization with choosing your armor. And it's actually nice that you can, like, there is a lot of customization in this game, especially for your character. There's actually a lot of armor pieces, like for your head, your shoulders, your body, the legs. Hell, every part of your character can actually be customized. Yeah, you can customize the face, but there's not really much you can do there. It mainly concentrates on the armor pieces, but I think the customization was actually done particularly well in this game. I actually thought it was pretty good, along with the fact that there's a lot more weapons in this game too. So, yeah, I think RainbowSix Vegas 2 was actually a big major improvement over the first Vegas game. The first Vegas game just really annoyed me a lot, especially when I was playing the campaign, and it took me a good while to do it. Like, it took me like, what, 8 to 9 hours? I think this game is probably the same amount of time, maybe a little bit less. I could be wrong, because this did feel a little bit easier compared to the first one. So I think RainbowSix Vegas 2 is probably about 8 to 9 hours as well, considering it has more sections in its campaign. But yeah, I'm not really sure. I didn't really time it, but yeah, I think this game was definitely an improvement over the first one. So I'm going to give RainbowSix Vegas 2 6 out of 10. So yeah, that is my review of RainbowSix Vegas 2. Definitely an improvement over the first game. It's just barely above average though, because the story isn't that really too compelling. But the mechanics that pretty much annoyed me from the first game were definitely improved upon in this game, so I have to give it some credit there. So yeah, hope you guys have enjoyed this review. Leave a like down below, comment what you think is right or wrong with the game, or you could comment what other games I could do, subscribe, and I shall see you guys in the next random video.